if you could give us 5 simple words that you think would describe Ark of Bones, Ark of Life.
My name is Walter Hood. I am a designer, artist, professor at UC Berkeley, teaching in the Department of Landscape Architecture and Environmental Planning. I have a studio, Hood Design. I think we're in our 25th year here in Oakland, California, where we're filming right now. We've started out as a landscape architecture firm that has slowly morphed into a design firm. The 5 words, I would say the first one would be memory. You know, as a kid, I always drew, right? I could always delineate. And then in high school, I moved into drafting. And I knew going to college that being the first person to go to college, there's no way I could choose art as a degree. My father just probably would just like lose his mind. So I chose architecture. And then after possibly maybe 12 years or so, I had the honor of receiving a Rome Prize. I get to Rome in my amazing studio, looking out over Rome, and I couldn't paint. And one of the painters there told me to stop sketching and said, why don't you just paint? Like, don't draw and fill in, just paint. And I was like, wow, cool. That's where memory began to kind of pervade, my life. So when I got back, it really became clear that I was interested in this kind of exhuming, right, of memory, and particularly in America. And so art was the way for me to constantly sift, right, through spaces. And whether it was part of a project or not, it still became a way to investigate, a way to think, and a way to be. A second word would be wake. Wake as an idea that's almost, I guess, more complex in thinking about it. When one thinks about a wake, at least for me, I think about funerary processes and experiences, but also wake means the kind of how a boat pretty much displaces water. And I really love that duality between the two, because in a way, the African American experience in America, we actually are living a wake. Growing up in the Carolinas in the 60s, I was, just a little toddler most of the time. I didn't have an understanding that we lived in a segregated world. And then the 70s hit, and this thing called busing happened. And I was like, what's busing? And they're like, you're going to get on a bus. It's like I was in 7th grade, and you're gonna go to a school out in the country. Getting on that bus and going to school and seeing all this new landscape, and then seeing all these parents literally in lines with bats and bullhorns. I mean, it was like right out of a freaking movie. So that's when it hit me, that there was this other world, and that there was this kind of forced integration happening. I went to college, and I went to an HBCU, so there was this kind of, again, going back to those 6 years before, I went back into this context where I was in a segregated community. But it was a time where I was nurtured enough so that when I did finally go out into the world, I had a sense of who I was, where I came from, and what I could do. Third word would be arc, the idea A-R-C, A-R-K, and just the relationship between these two. One that might suggest movement in a geometrical sort of fashion. Another might mean movement in time, but then the arc itself as a physical thing. Yeah, Dumas' Ark of Bones, it's a a short story that I've been giving my students to read over the last 20 years in my cultural landscapes class. And I thought the short story was very interested in how the river kind of lives in certain people's lives. And so when I came to Auburn the first time, we then went to the Legacy Museum and having that experience and also going to the site with the lynching, that short story just came to the front. And I was like, wow, maybe I should do something, that riffs on this short story. And that kind of led to this idea of the Ark, right? As this house of ancestors, as a place where we can actually think about the wake of the river, the Alabama River, but also how this vessel could somehow have this power to tell a multidimensional story. So here in Auburn, the Ark then has become the kind of the central sort of piece in which these discussions are, being bound around.
Fourth word would be diaspora, which talks about movement. I'm from North Carolina. I live in California. I know my ancestors are from Africa. I'm now working again in the South. Our work is all over the world.
There are these other narratives out there, right? There are these other cultural memories, artifacts, people, landscapes that are doing work. Seeing that work in Mobile and then being able to do something up in Auburn, it does begin to say Auburn has a story to tell just like Montgomery. There's not a single way to kind of understand our past and our present and our future. And particularly if we're all still behind this idea of America being this heterogeneous place where just different people can live together. We can still be American, right? But we've taken the politicalism to that, it's like, we gotta be the same. And we're seeing where those issues are because we're just losing so much. We're losing so much richness, I think. It's not just about coming to a space and enjoying a two-dimensional set of representations, but to come to a place and to be engulfed in different narratives. So that maybe when you leave, again, you leave this institution, Judy Collins Museum, that there is a different way of then seeing your world around you.
And lastly, I would say joy. And joy, I say that because in the midst of our life, whether it's complex, we're dealing with people, we're dealing with politics, issues and all, you gotta take time and have joy in your life. And you have to figure out what that joy might be. And hopefully through the show, there will be joy, there will be arcs, there will be wakes, and there will be memory. So, gotta get 5.